Speaking of Republicans getting a little fed up, then there's the FBI, Jeremy. As the political deadlock over the shutdown gave way on Friday, FBI Director Christopher Wray broke his silence to address the strain on law enforcement agents and personnel who had gone more than a month without pay.
Making some people stay home when they don't want to and making others show up without pay, it's mind-boggling, it's short-sighted, and it's unfair. It takes a lot to get me angry, but I'm about as angry as I've been in a long, long time. Now, I know there's some question about why you haven't seen the FBI leadership out there in the press fighting the good fight over the past 5 weeks. But there are real costs to doing that for us as an institution and for our 110-year-old brand. You know better than most that we've been thrust into the political spotlight more than we would have liked over the past few years. And the last thing this organization needs now is its leadership to wade right into the middle of a full-on political dispute. But let me also be very clear. We are actively advocating for you, left and right, at every level.
So, Jeremy, I mean, think about this. Donald Trump's talking about declaring a national emergency over something that every expert will tell you is not a national emergency, with border crossings down, 90% of the drugs coming through the legal ports of entry. I could go down the list. And yet, this shutdown that he caused by creating a phony crisis actually did cause one danger after another. There we saw the FBI director. Of course, as you know, the FBI not able to pursue all the terror leads that they usually would pursue, or, you know, the leads against, you know, gang members. You could talk about the Coast Guard and not being able to do all that they do on stopping the flow of drugs and human trafficking into this country. You could talk about TSA agents not being able to do their job as effectively and the dangers that that caused. The Pilots Association talking about air traffic. I mean, it just, there was one example of another example after another example of how this phony crisis created by Donald Trump created a real national security risk. And again, I've just got to wonder, Jeremy, is this really a risk that Donald Trump or any Republican is going to allow to be repeated again in 3 weeks?
I think where we're headed is a national emergency declaration. I disagree with David. I don't think the Democrats are going to give in to what they see as a concocted phony crisis that actually undermine national security in the way that Joe just outlined. And so I think where we're headed for is the president saying, I'm going to toss this to the courts. I'm going to direct the Department of Defense, the Department of the Army, to take money that would otherwise be used for military readiness and for operational activity, and we're going to devote it to building the wall, and I'll fight this out in the courts. I think he wants this issue off the table politically. But to your point, Joe, that move, like this past 3 weeks, will also undermine national security because it will take something tangible from the Pentagon and cause it to be used for a fake campaign promise.
But, you know, and one thing about it is such a direct challenge. Joe, you know this better than anyone. He's taking money that Congress appropriated for specific things and would be, under this term, moving it to something else. That is going against, you know, the kings of Congress, the appropriators.
It's an abuse of power. What it is, actually, it's an abuse of his ability to do that. The statutes that provide for that were not envisioned to fulfill a fake campaign promise.
Joe.
Well, and so as we've seen over the past 2 years, we know where this ends up. If he does that, and he knows where this ends up, it ends up in the courts. And you can bet that there will be Federalist Society court justices who will overturn any emergency declaration. Conservatives, moderate, liberal judges, whether they were appointed by Barack Obama or Donald Trump. So, Mika, this is a president who is backed into a corner, and there's only one way out of that corner. he has got to deal with Nancy Pelosi.
That is
and
correct.
on terms that he is not going to like. So tell us, Mika, how do you think that looks?
It looks like it's going to be absolutely fascinating, and I don't think it ends well for him. I think he's met his match with Nancy Pelosi. I think he absolutely doesn't know how to handle her because he's used to handling people on a very childlike level, bullying them, taunting them, calling them names. That does not work with Nancy Pelosi for a whole host of reasons, and it's actually perfect placement, her matched up against Donald Trump.
I wonder, though, David Ignatius, you're optimistic. I'm eternally optimistic. So let's just you and me talk here as optimists.
Just between us.
Why couldn't the Democrats go to Donald Trump and said, okay, you say $5.7 billion for your wall. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give you $6 billion for border security. But here's the deal. We're going to focus on ports of entry, where 90% of the heroin comes in that kills our kids and kills our fathers and kills our mothers and destroys our communities. We're going to spend more of that money also on drone technology and the sort of technology that we're using now in warfare in Afghanistan and across Syria. We're going to use it on 21st century technology. We'll meet you there. And yes, there are parts of the fence that actually do work and have been proven to stop illegal immigrants from coming in to the United States. And Democrats and Republicans have agreed on that. And parts of those fences are actually in disrepair right now. So we'll spend some money to repair that as well. And we'll do all of that. And all you have to do is say what you said you were going to do on Dreamers and on DACA, you know, a year ago. Why can't that be a grand bargain, David, where everybody wins?
So it can be, and I just had this hunch. I could be wrong. I could be too optimistic. That rather than take the country back into shutdown land, that Nancy Pelosi, who is a deal maker, she is what Donald Trump pretends to be, will find a package that has so much money in it for things that Democrats can defend. You heard Donna Shalala over the weekend say, we want border security, we want to spend the money, we want to be there for on this issue. And come out of it with a formula that it's very hard for Trump to turn down. The only other thing I wonder, given how upset the public is about the shutdown, whether we won't see more efforts to say this tactic is just not acceptable anymore in American politics, that whatever else we do, we're not going to. We're going to have some continuing resolution built in, and I think that would be a great way for the Democrats to back the Republicans up.
So to Joe's point, the reason it can't work, Joe, is because Donald Trump had a deal like that presented to him at the end of 2017, but the deal is for $25 billion on border wall funding. So if he were to accept anything under $25 billion at this point, it would be a lot of egg on his face and a massive failure. And on top of that, all the right-wing angst that you saw at the end of this current shutdown would be amplified tenfold because he would be doing, in their eyes, what is known as amnesty. And now to David's point, the reason it wouldn't work from the Democratic perspective is that it's now more than just about policy. It's about the leverage of using a government shutdown to negotiate. And what they want to see is not just policy gains that they can point to, DACA, for instance, but also a commitment from the president to never use a shutdown as leverage and a tactic before. We saw Nancy Pelosi in a briefing this past week where I attended, where she said she would support legislation that would prohibit shutdowns from ever happening again.
Isn't that part of the way out?
It could be.
It's got to be.
I mean, that could be part of the layout. But again, Mika, we can talk about what happened in the past, but the past is the past. What we're looking at is a 3-week deadline. Donald Trump knows, as do Republican senators, we can't do to the FBI and to the Coast Guard and the air traffic controllers and the TSA what we did over the past month. So there is a possible way forward. Donald Trump was holding 4 aces a year and a half ago when he was demanding $25 billion. Right now, he's got a busted, a busted straight, a busted flush, a busted whatever is busted when you're playing poker and you don't get that card that you want to draw. And one other thing, too. there are a lot of Democrats in states like Virginia, in states like Georgia, that won in Republican-leaning districts. They need to be able to go back. And they need to be able to say, hey, it's not just words. When we Democrats say that we believe in border security, too, we mean it. Donald Trump asked for $5 billion for a medieval wall. You know what we gave him? We gave him $6 billion. $6 billion at Homeland Security, and that all the experts said will actually make the border safer, will make America stronger, and will stop drugs from coming into Northern Virginia. Right. Vote me 2020. That's what the Democrats need to get out of this. They can't overreach. They need to make a deal, too. That's why count me as a member of Team Ignatius this morning.
Exactly. We'll see. Well, so far, instead of a wall, he got a cave. We have a lot more to get to on Morning Joe. So much. Still ahead, Jared Kushner reportedly told Chris Christie that firing Michael Flynn would end the Russia thing. Christie says he laughed out loud. New nuggets from the former governor's book. And the latest from the presidential campaign as a California senator and a Starbucks CEO shake up the race. We'll talk about all of that ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.